welcome. I'm Carolyn Jackson Miller, and this is my father, Edward Hendryx Jackson. I come from a large family. Well, two large families, that is. The Cuthberts and the Jacksons. Several members of each family are buried here. My Cuthbert grandparents, my aunt, my mother. And from my Jackson side are my father, my brothers, my grandmother Cordelia, and my Aunt Zelia. Oh, and my husband, Rudy Miller.
Carolyn, before we go any further, why are you wearing your bathing suit?
Oh, you're going to spoil the surprise. Surprise! I'm wearing a bathing suit. See, when I retired, I met some folks at the Historical Society, and I told them about early Long Beach. Well, they said I should tell my stories to school children, and I thought, well, the 1920s bathing suit will keep the children's attention. Boy, beach fashion sure had changed by the 1960s, huh?
All right, thank you.
Oh.
Back to our story. We're standing near the Jacksons. The Cuthberts are across the way. My wife, Carolyn's mother, was Nina Clarice Cuthbert, born in Monmouth, Illinois.
In 1874, in a jail.
She wasn't a criminal.
Oh, no.
Her father was the sheriff, and a physician, and a musician.
My grandfather, Dr. William Cuthbert, he used to give music lessons to put himself through medical school. And when Mother was very little, he loaded them all into a covered wagon. Yes, a covered wagon. And he moved them all to Kansas. My Aunt Georgiana, she was always sick. And Father thought, well, maybe we'll move them all to Long Beach. And he was right. She lived to be 78. Oh, hey, Father, why don't you tell them how you got to Long Beach?
I graduated from Purdue University with a degree in pharmacology. I was working as a pharmacist in Indiana. A coworker had a friend in Long Beach. I'd never heard of the place, but he said his friend was looking for someone to manage his drugstore and that I should apply for the job. I've often wondered if he was trying to help his friend or just wanted to get rid of me. It was 1897. My father had died the year before. It seemed a good time for a change. I took the job at Seaside Pharmacy and brought my mother and sister with me to Long Beach.
It was the city's first pharmacy. And Seaside wasn't just a name, it was a location. It was on Pine and First, a block from the beach.
I loved the salty smell of the ocean and the sound of the waves crashing on the ground of the sand. 2 years later, in 1899, the owner was ready to retire. I bought the store and changed its name to Jackson's Drugstore. It came with its own apartment right above the store.
Well, hey, Father, why don't we go back to the Cuthberts for a minute? I'm sure these people are intrigued to hear about the Cuthbert family band. Plus, it has a connection to what you want to talk about next, meeting Mother.
I know better than to try to stop you.
Oh. Well, Grandfather insisted that all his children learn to play musical instruments. He thought, what better way to keep boisterous children entertained? And that band, well, it went on for years. Mother used to say that they'd play music while they rode around on a flatbed wagon pulled by horses. Well, they'd play at political rallies, public events, and at the Methodist Tabernacle over on Locust.
Which is where I met your mother at a church social. It was the same year I bought the pharmacy. We got married 2 years later in 1901. There were two things your mother took very seriously: demon alcohol and women's rights. She was a suffragist, and in 1896 she campaigned to get the vote for women. It didn't pass, but she didn't give up. And in 1911, when it was once again on the ballot, I, like many men, voted to give California women the right to vote.
Oh, yay! Now, my father's skills as a pharmacist went beyond filling prescriptions. How many of you out there have a dog or a cat? Oh, goody! Well, my father invented a revolutionary type of flea powder that he sold at his drugstore. Tell him.
People used horses and buggies to get around. Horses have fleas, and they got on the people and their pets. I hope debugging animals wasn't the only thing people liked about my drugstore.
Oh, no. You kept things modern and gave shoppers what they wanted.
Jackson's had the first public phone booth in the city, and the first electric sign on the outside of the building. I wasn't one to poo-poo progress.
Poo-poo.
It was the circulation office for the Los Angeles Herald, a Democratic newspaper.
And the Herald competed with the pro-Republican Los Angeles Times. Oh! And you had an ice cream machine. Oh, remember you'd make sundaes with Mother's homemade chocolate and strawberry toppings. And families would come into the store on their way to the beach to get an ice cream cone. You and Mother always wanted a family like the ones we saw in the store.
We'd been married a year when our twin boys were born. They only lived a short while. They're buried here. Then you came along in 1905, a bright and happy baby. And 5 years after that, your brother Cuthbert was born.
Well, shortly after Cuthbert was born, you sold the drugstore and we moved to Anaheim Avenue.
I worked at several pharmacies and joined the hospital board and the water commission. Long Beach was growing. It seemed a good time to invest in real estate. I found these things much more interesting than running a drugstore. The years flew by in a blink.
And after Pearl Harbor was bombed, well, the city changed overnight.
It did.
Everybody was either going off to war or helping the U.S. to win it. At 72, you were a little too old to enlist, so you went to work for Douglas, helping them build airplanes.
I was glad when the war was over. Even in our 80s, Nina and I stayed very busy. I was still driving up until the day I died, December 30th, 1958. I was 86. Your mother and I had been married for more than 57 years.
Aww.
Nina died 2 years later. It's your turn. You're the family's romantic.
Okay. You and Mother said that education was very important. So, I graduated from Poly in 1924, and then went on to Pomona College, and from there, University of California, Southern Branch. Or UCLA, as you'd call it today. I graduated in 1929 and went to work for Farmers and Merchants Bank.
Later, you taught elementary school in Southgate.
Oh, I did, and that's where I met Rudy Miller.
In 1958, you and Rudy got married. I walked you down the aisle.
I was 53. Better late than never, right?
Right.
Now, Rudy, he was a union activist, and we were married for about 27 years. And one more thing. He was a German, and he liked peppermint schnapps. I used to have a drink of it with him every Christmas. Don't tell Mother.
In 1985, Rudy died. In 1995, you went to Polly's 100th anniversary party, and there you met John Dayton, who graduated the same year you did.
John Dayton. Oh, yes. After that, we were always together. We'd travel to other states to visit relatives, go to parties and college reunions. And in 1999, we went on a trip to England and France. Ooh la la! It was très magnifique in Paris. We walked along the Seine. We sat at those little outdoor cafes, watched the people go by. And it was there, in the City of Lights, when I was 94, that I died in my sleep next to the last love of my life.
We thank you for listening to our little story and for supporting the Historical Society of Long Beach.